OSAT as to how we can possibly, take this win that we have with you, right? How, if we have done any convincing, then how do we take the same concept and then take it to more donors? So by the way, these are all donors who have supported so many of these causes. So let me first go with the corporate donors. And I'll throw a couple of questions to you, and then, any of you feel like picking it up, just do that. So as a corporate, right, now we have this whole concept of CSR, corporate social responsibility. So this is a concept that has been initiated many years ago, and it seems like that is paying off, where 2% of the profits that the company makes has to be spent back on various social causes. Am I right? It's basically what it is. So given that scenario, where do you think OSAT fits in? Western, yeah, why don't you take Supriya?
Even before that, Jagdish, I'm sure it fits in beautifully, because the government is looking at, and there are certain criteria. There are 3 criteria. I don't think I'll remember the numbers, but it's either a revenue or profit or whatever that is. But there is a substantial portion that the company, while making profit or hitting a certain revenue, can keep aside and therefore go ahead and contribute. I guess where all of this fits in, first, let's say community relations or partnering with any NGO. Where that fits in is now you have a capital that is guided by government, and therefore that can be kept aside. There isn't a corporate that's going to come back and say, did you eat into your profit? Did we not meet any income or any stuff like that? So I guess that's a kitty available to you to do good work.
I see.
I think that in itself solves part of the problem, that we have the money. Where OSAT or any other foundation and more
And is this kitty typically done through employee contribution that companies will be matching, or the companies themselves will be contributing?
This is part of your balance sheet, part of your P&L, that this money is there for you, kept aside. Okay. And therefore there is a governance. It's part of the Companies Act. That's an addendum to that. And therefore there's a governance mechanism that the establishments will make sure that that money has been judiciously used, yes or no. Now I know there are companies who would probably not have mechanisms to partner, and therefore probably write a check to PM relief fund. That's one way of doing it, and therefore that's a channel used for other good work to happen. But I'm sure there are a lot of companies that are more aware, that are more have reached out to partners as OSAT, and therefore there's a contribution that can be made, and it has to be in line with your causes then as to what your foundation work is all about.
Bala?
We started this activity by putting all eggs in different baskets. That is a time when we got introduced to OSAT, and we thought this corporate investment or this type of charity works or whatever things, it can be put in a more productive way. We thought OSAT will be the ideal. We started contributing, and cumulatively we were starting doing it corporate-wise. That is how we started it. And we find it very effective also. It reaches the people, and investing in education, in people, is more interesting than investing in other infrastructure things. Education is the essence of the world. So if it is there, yes, we can achieve everything. So we are very happy to associate in this.
So this resonates well.
Yes.
Raghu?
Yeah, we had at ShoreTel, which was recently acquired by Mitel, a very passionate CSR committee that evaluated a lot of different projects that we would like to put our CSR funds towards. And when they heard the vision, mission of OSAT, and then the points that you made, Jagdish, in your presentation about zero overhead, complete transparency, it really resonated both from a cause perspective as well as an organization that we could really believe in. We can maximize the impact of our contributions. And the cause was education, which was very dear to our hearts. So it was a very, very easy decision for us to go with OSAT. And we were partnered on the Amritapura school, and we look forward to doing more.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let me ask you a question where, one of the challenges that we have faced, right, as we approach many of the corporations to get the money from the CSR, many corporations are looking at solving the city problems rather than the rural problems. What are your thoughts on that? Perhaps you can start.
Yeah, actually, the CSR committee at our company started out with a lot of city project evaluation. What we found as we dug more into it was there were a lot of political dynamics in that. There were also a lot of different vested interests, if you may call it, in those projects. We found that through OSAT, we were able to identify some projects that were really of great need, and as well as something that would be executed with transparency and with all the dollars going to the cause. So that was very appealing to us. The city projects do still appeal to some extent because we do feel we don't have the ability to stay in touch with the school as much. So if there was a project close by where we could invest in the infrastructure and invest our time, that would be great. But right now we're looking to separate those and saying, okay, we can invest our money to rural schools, but we can invest our time more locally.
I see. Bala?
See, we are into IT business. So we are specializing in IT business. So we thought a right person who is experienced, who can give us advice and who can suggest this is the right place you can invest. Your money is safe, it is going to the right hands. So we thought, yes, OSAT has done a good research on that and partner with us. So we thought, yes, we will be happy and the beneficiary will be really happy. So we thought, yes, we partner with OSAT on that. We evaluated so many people. But what happened is, they take the money, they run it for a few days, then we don't know what happened to them. We don't say they are fraud, but maybe because of their sustenance model was not up to the mark.
So, so from a feedback perspective, what do you think from a messaging or anything else, right, that we are doing today? What can we improve in order for us to tap into more number of corporations for this CSR dollar? I mean, if you have seen anything that we are not doing right, where the story didn't gel properly, or you had to take more time to convince more people within the corporations, right? Which is pretty normal, right? In any corporations, because there are tens of people who are trying to pull the money. So how do we get OSAT to the top of the bucket?
I can start. I think you're already doing a lot, and there are tons of applause and cheer around that. But I can start by sharing something very personal. When we were looking at various partners, and in 2013, when I joined Sanders, Satish is here in the audience, and Satish was like, he's a big believer.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, not such a great believer. And I'm like, here is somewhere where I can give a food and bring a smile on child's face. I can see the impact. Infrastructure wasn't maybe a great sounding thing, but however, over the years, it's like the proof of the pudding is in eating. I think when you look at the contribution you're making, we say food, shelter, clothing are important. However, how is the food, shelter, and clothing come to any individual when they don't have a job? How is job going to come when there isn't an education? So I guess the foundation is that. And how is an education going to come when there isn't a chair or a table or something to sit on? So I guess it's just understanding that, getting deep into it, that the message comes. But at the end of the day, I don't think OSAT is about infrastructure. I think OSAT is about creating future, shaping future, giving livelihood to someone. I think it's about that. So maybe infrastructure is a little bit of a logistics and a kind of sounding word to me, but Satish did an outstanding job, and every volunteer. Today, we wouldn't miss an opportunity to contribute and come forward and spend our time and effort and money with OSAT.
This is excellent, excellent, excellent. Did you guys take a note of it? Yeah? Raghu?
Yeah, I'd like to add one point. The OSAT decision was a very easy one at ShoreTel. I mean, everybody who heard the presentation immediately, the idea was very appealing. The operational model of the organization was very appealing. But some of the other people in the community with whom I've tried to share it have said things like, well, isn't this the government's job? Aren't they supposed to do this? Are we enabling the government to redirect funds to something else by taking on these projects? Things like that. So some of the points you said about what is the real actual money available through the government, and if there is a way for OSAT to tap into those funds, that I think will make the case even stronger, because there may be some skepticism that this is, corporates or other donors helping government funds to be utilized, which are meant for this, to be utilized somewhere else.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I want to see something. I was talking to Satish in the morning. So he was telling the best way we thought is bring people, they will bring everything. So it's a good forum that we have, allied people and like-minded people. They will bring people, they will make it happen, make it successful.
Wonderful.
All the best.
So we need to create more Satishas. Satish, we have to replicate you. Yeah, so really appreciate your feedback, and I think it's very, very interesting. So let me just jump to the individual donor. I don't know how many of you know of Raghu, and I'm pretty sure the company that he founded, every one of us would have used. How many of you have used Taxi for sure? Yep, you're seeing the person who founded Taxi for sure. And he just donated towards this Gurupura school on his mother's name. Thank you, Raghu. Thank you. So let me ask you this question where, you had very humble beginnings, and you have traveled across the nation, and you have interacted with a lot of the rural parts, which is, very untypical, right, for a city person, very, very untypical. That's what gives me the advantage. I happen to come from a rural part, but a lot of the city-grown people going to a village, spending time, is not something usual, right? So how important it is, from your perspective, to uplift these people? Or do you think there's only one or two that will come out of this, and the rest, may not turn out to be superstars or whatever? So what's your opinion?
So I think the privilege of the city kids, I think, is taken for granted. All right. But when you, thankfully, I grew up in Bangalore, but I studied in different campuses where I had exposure to certain kind of people. I think who came from rural background, rural schools and stuff like that, and I'm married to one such person also, right? So I understand firsthand how all these things really work out, right? So there, I thought the value system there is phenomenally high, right? Phenomenally core, and the kind of appreciation that they have for little things is far higher than what we probably do. We take a whole lot of things for granted, right? And that's, I think, and for us to really work on a value system at a later date in our life, it's much harder, right? And if there is some people who have a phenomenal value system, and if we are going to provide opportunities for them, I think that's phenomenal, right? And also, right, so I came from a humble background, right? Lower middle class, and I think only a reason why I'm here is probably the kind of education that we had and the kind of people that I grew up with. I think education is, something that everybody understands. But I know for sure that there were a lot of people who helped, right, to contribute to whatever that we did. Our education is highly subsidized. Right, and a lot of people donated for the different schools that I went into also. It's very difficult to really approach them and thank them for what they did, right? But what we can really do is to pay it forward, right? And I think that's where the idea of essentially associating myself with an organization really started, right? It's very difficult to go figure out who are the people who contributed for my development, right? It's hard, and going and thanking them, we don't know whether they still live alive or not. Right, but what we can probably do is to make whatever difference that people brought in our life, probably we paid forward and essentially bring the similar kind of a difference, or probably a better difference in other people's lives, right? And that's essentially how the pay it forward started. So when OSAAT approached me, I was talking to quite a few organizations. When OSAAT approached me, I thought everyone more or less says the same thing, right? That all your money will be effectively used, and this is the way we are going to do it, and stuff like that. But I think the infrastructure was not something that I was probably keen on, right? But I think the biggest thing that, apart from what the other panelists said, right? If we essentially invest in a school infrastructure, right, and Wadi was mentioning this a couple of days back, that the school essentially becomes a fulcrum of activity for the entire village. It's not just for the students, right? So I've seen that experience at first hand, right? When I was growing up, the school was a place where the Rotary guys used to come and do the blood donation camps. The Lions Club is going to come and do other camps, right? So the entire local community used to be essentially get into the school and be part of the things that used to happen in the local community, right? If we invest in infrastructure, we are not just helping the students. It's not really a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plan, right? There is some immediate benefit that we're going to bring to the table, right? If there is no infrastructure, the Lions Club, the Rotary guys who want to really help the community, they don't really have a place to come and do anything, right? But if we invest in the infrastructure, that essentially becomes the fulcrum of activity, and that essentially increases the awareness amongst the villagers, and that essentially leads to an immediate upliftment. So there is a long-term investment that OSAAT is doing in the infrastructure, but there is an immediate benefit also, and that's essentially how we did that. And I didn't really immediately jump into this. I visited one of the schools in Dharwad, right? I think what really surprised me was the enthusiasm and the interest of the headmaster over there. I don't know whether he's part of this, the next panel or not. So what I realized was OSAAT essentially had given them something they never thought they would ever have. They gave them hope. The headmaster, when I spoke to him, he was talking about smart classes. He was talking about library. He was talking about labs. He was talking about a museum so that the students can essentially relate to and do that. If you don't really have a basic infrastructure, who will think about a smart class? Who will think about a lab? Who will think about a museum? Who will think about a library? No one is going to think about all that. Because OSAAT did that, now the headmaster thinks that they can do more, right? And now they are dreaming dreams that never dreamt of. And that's the one which essentially made me to commit to OSAAT. And if you guys are still debating, still thinking of the multiple choices that you have, why you need to do this, apart from whatever BV said in the previous presentation, the on-the-ground impact is phenomenally higher. I'm not really sure OSAAT appreciates that, what they're doing, but I think on the ground, when you speak to people, that it's phenomenally higher.
Fantastic. So, if I may summarize and gather and even take as an input, you know, many a times, most of our children who grow up in cities hardly get to visit these rural places and challenging environments. So sort of like these children are growing up in our own bubble or in their own bubble, right? Their world is a next iPhone, their world is the next biggest gadget, the biggest, more materialistic driven kind of thing. So if I may gather, would it be appropriate to say that most of the parents should make conscious effort to go visit villages, take their children, right? Spend time, understand. I mean, as you said, a school is not just a school. It's a complete ecosystem of bringing together so many other things in the village. I mean, that unless you experience that, you would never know, right, the value of it. So would you recommend that?
Yeah, they should do that.
Okay, wonderful. So let's go to the last speaker, Mr. Sridhar Chari of Rotary. And Rotary has been one of our biggest partners right from the early days. In fact, my brother, who was very actively involved with Rotary, they've been very, very supportive of us, especially given the fact that, with the financial aspects, transferring money from US to India without this FCRA, it's a very challenging thing, and Rotary has come forward and helped us in many, many schools of the 21 that we have done. So explain to us, sir, that you are one of the largest nonprofit organizations, and clearly, Rotary across the board, right, has chosen OSAAT to be one of its core partners. And explain to us that why is it, so obviously it's not just one Rotary chapter, right? This is across the whole nation, Rotary chapters have come forward. So that shows a value system, right, that exists in the Rotary organization and how that ties up with the OSAAT. So please share with us your views.
Thank you. Good evening. Just to come back to the first point which you raised, just shortly, why rural schools? And as you have seen, all your schools are 21 which you have built are in the rural areas, basically because India is in the villages. And The city schools are plenty. There's no point in putting up schools in the city. The rural schools are really the places where the investment needs to be done. And we in Rotary have also, apart from partnering with OSAAT, have been building schools. And OSAAT, for us, when we built the first school with you at Bannerghatta, that was our first school which we built. And we realized that there was more what you brought to the table than what any other organization brings in. There was a little bit of a concern which you could feel. It was not just, okay, I've collected the money, I need to build a school fast. There was and there we found a lot of synergy, where we also believe that when we build a school, the ownership of the school must be from the community. The problem we have in India basically is that once it's named a government school, it generally tends to be an enemy property. So if there's anything, the glasses would break, something would break, the first target would be the school. So in the schools which we have built with OSAAT, and of course OSAAT is also doing it with other places, is to bring a sense of community ownership. Which is why the schools which we have built with you in Malur, you were talking about the cluster concept. Correct. That's exactly where we have 3 of the OSAAT school, apart from the other schools which we have built. We found that community ownership is a very basic foundation element to ensure that the schools last long. The schools which we have built with you, they have been painted, the glass panes break, the school changes it, not at our cost. But of course, we have to bring them to that level, make them understand that the school is for their children and so for their community upliftment. And that is something which was very positive with OSAAT. The third thing we found with OSAAT, there was a lot of healthy debate. How to improve delivery systems, how to improve and integrate units. Like for example, now the model which we have developed with OSAAT is the single line model where we have the kitchen block, we have the Nalli Kalli, which is generally the 1st to the 4th standard, and the 2 other classrooms in one block, and then the toilet block outside. It looks simple, but there's been a lot of thought which has come from the OSAAT members, because I think when OSAAT, when they do anything with a passion, there's something else which comes out. There's a sort of a quality which comes out of a passion. And that is something which I found admirable with OSAAT. And we are very lucky and happy to have OSAAT as a partner.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you, thank you. So I think clearly, I think what the panel is saying is the rural is equally important. I mean, if you look at Saram Vishwesvaraya, right? He came from a rural, so that means there are a lot of gems that we don't know where they are sitting and why they are there.
Undiscovered.
And we need to discover, yes. And that's why, you know, this whole school construction, what we have realized is actually one of the hardest thing. And not very many NGOs actually take on this infrastructure. And without the proper infrastructure, you cannot even attract good kids into the school. I've seen this personally myself in my own village. So I think it's important for us to continue to focus and work with partners like yourself and donors like yourself and more of that, and turn our goal of 100 schools in the next 8 to 9 years a reality. So thank you so much for all your work. Sorry, you wanted to add something?
No, I just wanted to add one small thing which was something which motivated me to get into schools, basically. We've been building schools for the last 30 years now. You were talking about rural schools and the urban schools. We built one school in Tannery Road, which is in the city. And we also built the first school in the rural village. The inauguration of these 2 schools which took place, for the Tannery Road School, we had some guests coming in from Britain. They had made the donation. And the inauguration of these 2 schools showed me why we really need to concentrate on the rural villages. The inauguration was over. The guests come out, and as a gesture of goodwill, they take out their garlands and put it on the children in Tannery Road. Within 3 minutes, all the garlands are lying as pieces on the ground because each kid is trying to grab. It's a sort of a saying, if not me, not you too. This sort of a culture. No? In the cities, we have this problem. I or if I don't get it, you don't get it too. The same year, we inaugurated a school in Malur, and we had gone there with some sweets to distribute to the children. And possibly they don't see sweets so often because it's a government school, really poor children there. And this kid comes up to me with that one sweet which he received, and he gives it to me and says, please take this sweet. I said, listen man, you're getting a sweet once in a year possibly. I'm saying the innocence and the love they have in the rural areas is something which we really have to experience to believe. And I feel our focus should remain on the rural areas. Sorry if I've taken more time.
No. Thank you. That was very, very valuable. Thank you. Please give a big hand to the panelists. So, one last question. Will you all contribute to donate to the OSAAT cause? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you.